Superman, the icon, the legend, the ultimate hero. For him to be this level of a hero, surely there's some reason as to why, right? This only begs another question. What could make Superman the unbelievably powerful character and concept that he actually is? Is it stars or maybe even yellow radiation? Well, partially. Is it Lois Lane and the concept of love? Not necessarily. Trust me, the truth is far more interesting than that. Superman is many things in DC, but there is actually a hidden power set that he has that few people are aware of. The truths behind the absurd powers of Superman and what powers his multiversal archetype will be solved today by me. What's up guys, it's me Lumos Theromax, and this is a follow-up to my video on the absurd power of Superman and his multiversal archetype. Instead of focusing on the raw scaling for the story of Superman, as I did in my last Superman video with channel homie Zeus, I'll actually be proposing a wild theory that I proposed to Zeus in that video, as well as a while back. So sit back, like and subscribe, as well as turn notifications on, or even consider becoming a member on the channel with all sorts of benefits, perks, and all sorts of stuff. All the links are down low, so with no further ado, let's get straight into this one, Lanterns. But back to the point, a little while ago I was pondering some of the details of the story of Superman, and a theory began to form based on a few things I was reading. What if Superman was the hope of the multiverse for a non-meta contextual reason? In other words, what if there was an inverse way to explain Superman's story and narrative and power outside of the lol, well, the authors wrote it, that's just what they want meme? So let's move on to the theory by starting with some necessary history required to get you up to current date to understand the complexity of this overpowered meme of a theory. There once was a mad hand of the presence named Perpetua who valued selfish actions and crisis energies rather than the connective forces that were intended by the hands and the presence for hands to utilize to create multiverses. As a result, Perpetua creates her own multiverse, as many hands do, but with predominantly crisis energies instead of connective ones, causing a twisted new multiverse. This is something the Monitor notices and even questions Perpetua on, and Perpetua is not happy about being questioned by her subordinates or her children. As a result, the Monitor and his brothers totally tattletale on Perpetua by telling Perpetua's masters, the Judges of the Source. Once the Judges of the Source heard of Perpetua's blasphemous new act of creating her verse out of crisis energies, they sent forth the Cosmic Raptor to trap Perpetua and her children, the Apex Predators, in something called a newly made Source Wall. Reality is remade with mainly anti-crisis or connective energies, and thus a new creation occurs, destroying Perpetua's original creation almost entirely, leaving a few remnants of what for the prior existence had intact in this newly made creation, or at least newly remade creation. The Cosmic Raptor claims that Perpetua was to learn from her mistakes by forcing her to eternally view this newly remade creation. Logically, both the forces of the Source and the Presence would like to make sure that there is a powerful example in verse to show Perpetua the follies of her ways of using crisis energies and to give in to using anti-crisis energies by giving them a shining example to learn from, a figure of indomitable moral strength. But who exactly could be this wildly important figure? Well, if you've seen the title of the video, I'm sure you figured it out. Today I'm here to argue that it's Superman and his hope-driven narrative. Now, I'm not gonna lie to you guys, hope-driven narratives can be pretty cringeworthy if I'm being honest, and you can't just deny their existence, but at the same time, you at least got to acknowledge them. So let's talk about how Superman's story has always been notably stronger than the others that exist inside the multiverse. This is reinforced throughout Superman's story and throughout all of DC's entire publication history. A great modern example of this would be during the events of Infinite Frontier, whenever Dr. Multivision looks at Superman and sees his multiversal archetype, describing Superman's archetype, even in the modern day, as something far superior to the other archetypes around, that his archetype is things like stars, with surrounding planetoids that is the archetypes of other figures that just happen to circle his in every universe that exists. A solid reference from post-Crisis would be the events during Infinite Crisis, where Alexander Luthor rightfully claims that everything that exists comes from Superman, and revives most of the original multiverse, Multiverse 2, during that event directly as a result of utilizing the archetype of Superman, the original Superman from Earth 2. Each individual universe has a Superman, and even the monitors fear those Superman, as well as the archetype, believing that it could cause a crisis with the power the Superman have. If you've read DC and you aren't as brain dead as my average bot lane in League of Legends, you would have concluded that Superman's archetype is built different, okay? Like, way different. And it's well established, but as usual, I mean, just for the history and everything, I had to drop a few scans for the naysayers, because I'm sure they're already in the comment sections typing up hate about how I didn't give enough proof directly in the video. And if honestly that's your criticism of me and my content, man, you must be blind at this point in time, okay? Blinded as bad as you are, as if Teemo hit you with the Teemo dart, alright? Now, Superman and his narrative have time and time again demonstrated that it's able to do the impossible and has simultaneously been at the forefront of the most notable events and crisis events throughout all of DC's history. There is a reason for this. Why? Well, let's do a little bit more digging, okay? I believe Superman's narrative is on full display during the events of Doomsday Clock, where we predominantly discuss all sorts of things in reference to it. During this event, Dr. Manhattan, a being of pure connective energy, came to our creation and recognized Perpetua's influences over the DC multiverse via all the major crisis events in the multiverse's history. But why would Perpetua create these events? Well, these crisis events shatter or tear up the source wall, or at least weaken it, as mentioned before, which is why Perpetua promotes them. She wishes to be free from the prison the Cosmic Raptor trapped her in, the source wall, once more. Manhattan goes on to explain in that story that every time he makes changes to this specific multiverse, the home DC multiverse, that the multiverse grows to preserve every single era of Superman that could possibly exist. Manhattan explains that no matter how many times Superman's existence is attacked in a metaconceptual level, that he always survives, no matter what, even if the changes are constant, that Superman embodies hope, and that he's the North Star of the metaverse. So, what exactly is the metaverse if that's the case? Well, a metaverse is what Dr. Manhattan theorized was the changes to existence, or the entire reformation of existence, regardless to anything that could possibly occur to the archetype of Superman in the main DC universe under any circumstance or alteration. Whatever was causing this metaverse event was beyond Dr. Manhattan, and he failed to overcome it in pretty much every way. He could destroy things, but it would always come back. Well, why is this relevant? Because Dr. Manhattan was powerful enough to nuke all of reality inside the Doomsday Clock story, and then later on, with just a tiny fraction of his power, you could overpower Perpetua, you know, the mother of the multiverse. Well, if you weren't a loser like Wonder Woman was in that story. So, like, the power of the metaverse really is on another level. This is like genuinely next generation shit. Floppy Blue Boy then continues explaining that Superman is the being of generations that will lead everyone to peace, that everyone will eventually embrace his ways, and that is the purpose of Superman. Superman goes on to convince Manhattan of all of this in real time during Doomsday Clock, refusing to choose violence against Manhattan in an act of good faith. It appears Manhattan recognized the purpose of the metaverse at the end of this story, and Superman, and stopped interfering with Superman and his archetype so that Superman's archetype may continue its work throughout the entire multiverse. But what work exactly? Just stopping random bad guys? No, it's something deeper than that. Remember Superman affecting everyone in this scan here? In this instance, everyone being referenced would be everyone within our metaverse. Well, what exactly is inside the metaverse? Bare minimum, absolutely everything, at least the source wall and below it on the multiversal map, at a low ball. And since this is the case, is it unbelievable that Perpetua could be affected since she was inside the source wall? Remember, she's been cooking in there for about, I don't know, like 10 billion years or so. But things get even weirder when you consider the idea that Perpetua was tasked by the Cosmic Raptor to watch this new reality while trapped inside the source wall. so that she could learn from it. After all, it was recreated with Justice or Anti-Crisis energies in order to rehabilitate her, right? But rehabilitate her how? Remember when I mentioned earlier that the story of Superman has been at the forefront of every crisis and major cosmic event in history? Well, I'm not sure that's a coincidence. In fact, the story of Superman has almost seemed custom designed, tailor-made to prove Perpetua's narrative of crisis energies as inferior to connective energies or anti-crisis energies at every single turn. A solid character whose strong example and morals would rehabilitate Perpetua unintentionally inside the source wall. A character whose multiversal archetype and narrative can't be deleted permanently, even if you are on the level of a figure like Dr. Manhattan. A surefire method to guarantee no matter what happens to this hero of Anticrisis that he will return and continue being that guiding light, or should I say North Star, for everyone in the multiverse. Good, evil, positive, negative, even beings as twisted as Perpetua are included on that list. We also know that the higher powers at play, such as the hands and the presence, look to Superman and the other heroes as weapons against the darkness and evil to keep them from wiling too hard. The archetype of Superman lives up to the ideals of those higher powers better than anyone else, unless you're about as blind as Lee Sin. I mean, here is literally a scan of Wonder Woman saying that Superman embodies the traits that everybody wishes to live up to better than anybody else around. So, good luck trying to overcome that one. Clearly, Superman can be seen as a representative of the presence and hope inside our multiverse, and furthermore, could definitely be used as a tool to rehabilitate Perpetua from her twisted crisis energy ideology while she sat inside the source wall. But Lumos, says Potato2verse69, you said he was the embodiment of hope? Too bad hope is just a part of the emotional spectrum, which is a fragment of just one anti-crisis energies. How could Superman be so strong if he only embodies such a small aspect of power like hope? What is he, a Blue Lantern? Well, for once, you're not 100% wrong, Potato2verse69, so let's dig even deeper into the Superman iceberg that I've developed here whenever it comes to foundational energies that promote characters and power the entire multiverse at hand. The fundamental concepts that power the multiverse are anti-crisis and crisis energies. Like the ones I mentioned before that the presence used to recreate the multiverse after Perpetua created with crisis energies, anti-crisis energies are pretty OP. They are things like the Speed Force, the God Sphere, the Collective Unconscious, but since this Potato2verse69 over here brought up the emotional spectrum, let's talk about it specifically. You see, there's an entire arc in the Justice League 2018 run where we essentially find out that each of the core members of the Justice League is empowered by one of those foundational anti-crisis energies. It's important to consider that those energies are born of the presence himself, and I've mentioned that a few different times for a reason. So, if all League members are powered by an anti-crisis energy, well, what anti-crisis energy was Superman bestowed by the supreme ruler of the greater omniverse, the presence? Hope? Honestly, emotional hope, as he said, would be pretty underwhelming for him to be powered by, and honestly, it's pretty much a garbage tier power set in general, but either way, clearly it was Jon Stewart inside that run who was powered by the emotional spectrum, powered by emotion, not Superman. Even if that wasn't the case, as Potato2verse said, hope is just one aspect of the emotional spectrum, and Superman's by every and any metric better than any Blue Lantern or one fragment of one foundational energy. Very clearly. Like, that would be such a disservice to Superman if that was the argument. And honestly, if you want more reasoning as to why I don't think Superman is a Blue Lantern, if this video gets 100 likes or more, I'll give you like the absolute reasoning, and it's far more interesting than you actually think. But let's not get too distracted. Let's get back to the point. There's something far more to Superman's power set than just being solar powered. Well, where's the evidence? Back in the 2018 Justice League run I just mentioned, it's stated that each member is powered by one of those anti-crisis or connective energies, but unfortunately I wasn't entirely honest whenever I said that. There's actually one hero who had no direct mention of what they were powered by. Anyone care to take a guess? Well, strangely enough, it was Superman. Which only begs even more questions as follow-ups. But the most important question to ask is, which anti-crisis did not have a League member associated with them to specifically draw power from? The answer may surprise you, but before we discuss that energy that empowers Superman, I also want to drive this point home even further, that this is far more than just random speculation. Just as every Justice League member had a counterpart on the Legion of Doom, each one of those Legion of Doom members were each powered by one individual crisis energy, the foundational opposite to the Justice Leaguer that they represented. Take for example Sinestro, who is empowered by the invisible spectrum, versus John Stewart, who is empowered by the emotional spectrum. And of course, Superman's polar opposite was Lex Luthor. So what exactly did Lex Luthor have to master in order to combat the oppositely powered nemesis of his, Superman? Faithlessness. Lex Luthor had to master faithlessness. And if you think about that, Superman, who's his opposite, should logically be powered by the foundational opposite. And it just so happens that the foundational opposite was the one power the Justice League did not mention empowering a Justice Leaguer. It was faith. Faithfulness. Faithfulness? How exactly does that fit into all of this? But before we get to that, I feel like I'm throwing a lot at you, so let's recap things so far. The original question at hand was, what if Superman was the hope of the multiverse for a non-metacontextual reason? What if there was an inverse way to explain his story and narrative without relying on writers from the real world? Here's why and how, starting with the Agents of the Presence, or the god of DC himself having our multiverse remade with anti-crisis energies after Perpetua shit the proverbial multiversal bed in creating her multiverse with crisis energies. The Cosmic Raptor trapped Perpetua inside a newly built source wall with the intent to rehabilitate Perpetua via watching this new anti-crisis multiverse. Superman has been a figure in the multiverse, stopping the greatest crises and threats that have occurred, and remains a wildly positive role model who is tied to the metaverse, a structure that will maintain the DC existence under any situation as long as it can bring back the story of Superman. Superman, whose story that is the hyper story of talk no jutsu, truth, justice, and a whole lot of faith. Returning back to faith and faithfulness, it ties everything back together. But how? If you have spent any time throughout any of the Lucifer series or any Spectre run, faith is a core principle tied to the Presence himself. Don't believe me? Go ahead and dive into the Spectre 1991 run, where you could find tons of symbolism between the concepts of the Presence and the concepts of faith and faithfulness. In fact, the Presence is often seen as the leader of the angels from heaven that are clearly influenced by Judeo-Christian religions and beliefs. Religions that are entirely based on your faithfulness to God. Your faith in acting in accordance to God's will. Sound familiar? Coincidence? I think not. Superman's entire presence does nothing but affect things, beings, and existence positively. With this in mind, is it so unbelievable that Superman was chosen to be the hero of anti-crisis energies, to change the ways of Perpetua and everyone else that possibly could turn from the side of anti-crisis, to turn to the wrong methods, the wrong ways of how to make existence churn. Back to the side of anti-crisis and justice, over doom and crisis, on behalf of the Presence himself. I think so, but be sure to tell me down low. That being said, it's been very good, everyone, and be sure to like and subscribe or even become a Theromax Corps member by joining memberships on the channel, as it helps me make a ton of content and it helps you decide what kind of content I make going forward, as it only gets better from here if your voice is heard inside my channel. So I'm going to keep this exit pretty safe, pretty simple. Tell me what you guys think. I'm really interested to hear what you think down low and this kind of video. And with no further ado, Lanterns, we'll catch you next time. Later.
Corrupting and creating events that affect the entire verse was the only way she theorized to decimate her source wall curse, and so she whispered madness to her child, the Anti-Monitor, driving him towards his revenge on his brother, the Monitor. A crisis on infant Earths is what he decided to grant, but her children were